At the end of the last video that I did about this MG 1100, I did say that you could call it finished at this point, but I didn't. Took it apart, stripped the body. The metal looks to be very good, so we've got so lucky with this casting. Everything about it has turned out to be really good quality. There's no, like the glass was really good, the base plate came up nicely, the wheels restored quite nicely in the interior, and then the metal in the castings turned out not to really have any defects or anything like that. So as I said, I did say you could call it done at the end of the last video, but I did mean that. I did have it on display for a few days like it was. It was everything really done, apart from just the body hadn't been painted. We just sort of cleaned it up a bit. But I couldn't leave it there. I couldn't resist it. I had an idea of what colour I could do it, and I'm not going to say that I was determined to follow through with that exact idea, because the idea of what colour it was going to be changed a couple of times before I eventually decided on one that wasn't the one that I thought at the start anyway. So I'm just getting the body ready for airbrushing. So I've gone over it with just the metal toothbrush, bit of wire wool, Stanley knife blade, just to get a couple of bits of paint that wouldn't come off with any other method, and then 600 grit sanding cloth just to finish it off, just to make the whole thing smooth. So it's almost got towards the stage of being mirror polished. I just thought I always like to just reassemble it at each stage just to see what it looks like. I mean, it would look nice like that. So again, you could just say it's done, it's finished, because it looks lovely actually. Just not quite mirror polish, but just sort of bright bare metal. Be nothing wrong with just calling that done and putting that on display, but that's not what we're doing. So starting off with gold, it does go on a little bit thin at first. I think I thinned it down a little bit too much, probably put about 50, maybe 60% thinners. Completely accidental. I wasn't trying anything. It wasn't like a fun experiment. It was just a mistake. Now, if you do start spraying and you realise you've got your paint too thin with these airbrushes, just stop. I did stop very shortly after this and just let it dry. And in fact, no, I've already stopped by this point and thickened the paint up a little bit, and now it's going on a lot better. But yeah, the last thing you want to do if you realise you've got it on a bit too thin, don't just think, oh, well, I'll put some more on, because you'll just end up with it running and going all over the place. So, like I say, if that happens to you, just stop, thicken the paint up, and then give whatever's on there a chance to dry, and then that should provide at least it'll provide a nice little ground coat for when you go back to it 20 minutes, half an hour later, or however long it takes just to harden up. And again, I felt the need to even though this is only a secondary stage, I thought I'll just reassemble it, because it does look really good in this gold, this Tamiya gold leaf it's called. It's a very good colour for it. I will be doing something in this colour and leaving it at some point. I mean, obviously it's not been lacquered because we're putting a transparent paint on top. You don't really need to lacquer it though. I mean, some people would say lacquer it to protect it, but I'd say, well, protect it from what if you're displaying it inside? And having a nice matte finish when it's a nice consistent metallic paint like that is a very nice effect. It doesn't necessarily need lacquer, but anyway, that's for another day, because we're putting a different colour on this. So you may have guessed, or you may not have, but I'm putting transparent red over the top of that gold, because obviously it's a transparent colour, so it won't look like it does if you put it over silver. It's quite different. I mean, all red's transparent to a degree, but this is obviously designed as a transparent red, so it will be affected and influenced by whatever colour's underneath. I just think it looks quite nice in this video, because you just sort of, because the airbrush is quite a low atomization thing and quite low pressure, you don't really see any kind of spray. It just looks like it's slowly changing colour, which it is, of course. Now, the reason I'm showing this Studebaker Lark in the inset window is that's your alternative to this method. If all this with the airbrush looks like something you absolutely cannot be bothered with, I completely get that. So that's Studebaker, that's your alternative. You'll get a similar colour if you just go down to a Motor Factors, any kind of car accessory shop, and just get a medium shade of metallic red. Get a decent aerosol, the kind of thing where you have to pay about £10 for a 500ml aerosol, and you can just spray that. You don't need to bother with the undercoat. You can just spray that directly onto the body, and as long as you're careful with it and you're patient with your actual spraying, you will get almost the same effect. It's obviously not going to be quite the same, because if it was, I wouldn't be bothering to do this. But On the other hand, I obviously thought it was good enough to do it on that Studebaker, even though I could have done this. So it's still a very, very lovely finish that you get at the end. So if all this just looks like a bit of a faff, then get yourself an aerosol like that and do it like that. It's not that much different. But having the transparent over the metallic base, like the sort of candy paint effect, it does give it a little bit of something, so it is worth doing if you can be bothered with the airbrush. I mean, like I say, I've got another video that shows you chapter and verse on how to use this airbrush and the kind of things you can do with it. So if you can be bothered with it, I mean, they're only about £17, and it's all, you don't need a compressor, it comes with its own thing. So, and they're relatively fuss free to use, whereas the more expensive airbrushes, they tend to be, they can be quite faffy. So, but like I say, if you can be bothered with it, then it's well worth it, because you get something like this at the end, which is something a little bit, it's a fairly well used Matchbox colour from the 70s. They used it. One of the minis that they did was a very similar colour, Rolls Royce, Silver Shadow, things like that. It's sort of somewhere in between the mini and the Rolls Royce Silver Shadow. But they never did it on this one. This was just in dark green, and then this sort of teal colour that this one was in to start with. So I just thought it's kind of righting a historical wrong and just putting this one into a colour that I think they should have done it in right from the start. And if I'm quite honest, I can't stop looking at it. It just looks so right in this colour. It looks so right in this colour, but also, even though this casting's before my time, I don't remember it. I know from being a kid, because it was a good, probably about a decade before my time, really. But I've only really learned about it in the last few years, but I am still quite used to seeing it in the colours that it comes in, so it's quite strange seeing it like this, in this red. Now, from the antics that were going on in the, well, I call it the paint shop, but it's actually a melon box, I would say I gave it about 48 hours before I handled it and put it back together, and then it was ready to go out and play with its other similarly oddly coloured buddies from the same era on the Matchbox motorway. I know it's not a Matchbox motorway from the right era, I know it's an 80s one, but this is the only one that I've got. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this admittedly very good kind of diamond in the rough specimen being, hopefully, I think you'd agree, done justice. Join me next time for more making things different colours. Until then, ta-ra!